freaking first cut. Golly. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is an emergency pod recorded after round 3 of the Memorial off of the breaking news that Jon Rahm has tested positive for COVID-19, and he has withdrawn from the event. Joining me is Kyle Porter. KP, welcome.
Yeah, fresh in from, I was on a little vacation this weekend. I was driving in thinking, okay, I've got until Sunday to kind of figure this, I was actually writing about the tournament, but I hadn't done any podcasting or HQ or anything. And then boom, 30 minutes before I get home, Jon Rahm, round of the year, almost the 64, he gained like 9.5 strokes on the field. And then 5 minutes later, he's out of the tournament.
Call it the day of the year, because he played 3 or 4 holes this morning from his second round, made an ace, made another birdie.
One. Yeah.
I mean, it was unbelievable. The roller coaster. We'll get to all of that. So here's what happens. I mean, we were wrapping this up. CBS was literally signing off. They were saying goodbye. Jon Rahm had just tapped in or just made par on his final hole of the day, and he gets approached greenside by some men in masks and receives some very obviously devastating news, because he hunches over. He almost, he squats down. It's obviously very upsetting. Let's start with that, KP. Greenside on 18 is a place where Jon Rahm has received bad news before. Is there not a better place we could have done this?
I would have him at Muirfield Village, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just greenside on 18. It's greenside on 18 at Muirfield Village. Spot. Yeah. You see his reaction to it, and it's kind of scary, right? You're like, not that testing positive for COVID is not scary, but like that, like the way it played out. And again, I didn't see this live. I was kind of catching bits and pieces. It felt like something like crazy, right? Like family and who knows? Like that's what it seemed like. Thankfully, it's not that. But yeah, man, like when Jon Rahm walks off 18 at Muirfield Village next year, he should be surrounded by his agent, a couple of bodyguards, his caddy. I mean, it has not been a pleasant place for him over the last 2 years.
Don't let anybody near that guy. Okay, so here's the statement from the PGA Tour. So this goes back to Monday, May 31st. The PGA Tour notified Jon Rahm that he was in contact with someone who tested positive, which puts him into the contact tracing protocols, KP, which means because he was asymptomatic, he can remain in the tournament, and he gets tested every single day, in which he was. The test from this morning, because it was after the conclusion of the second round and before the start of his third, so that would have been Saturday morning, that test returned a positive around 4:20 p.m. Eastern time. Rahm was in the midst of his scorching 64. And then they retested that same sample and came back around 6:05, just as kind of Rahm's round was finishing, that it was also positive. So what this means, Kyle, is Jon Rahm now goes into isolation, and he has withdrawn from the Memorial with a 6-shot lead.
It's hard. It's difficult to talk about this because we have no precedent. Right. What's the closest thing that we have? Brandon Grace withdrew from the Barracuda, right?
After 2 rounds, I think.
I think so. Has there been anything else? I'm just doing this off the top of my head.
This was literally, we have made a lot of podcasts in the last year and a half, not knowing what was going to happen in an hour or a day or a week or whatever. We've probably sounded very stupid, but like this was the one thing we talked about when golf returned. Like, what happens if a guy tests positive after 54 holes and he's got the lead or something like that? And I'm almost stunned it took a year for it to happen. And just as the tour has started to relax, and they're going to stop testing altogether, at least the plan is, at the end of June. So it was just shocking.
It was shocking, and it was the scenario we laid out, right? Where, I mean, what were the kind of the pillars of like the worst case scenario for this happening? It was superstar player, big lead after the third round, and then at a major championship. So that was the one, but it's not, I mean, listen, like it's not next week at Congaree. No offense to next week's event at Congaree. It's the Memorial. It's a big, I mean, you could argue outside of what the majors and the WGCs, it's the biggest tour event. Would you make that argument? Riviera,
it's certainly in whatever the next tier is. Whatever the next tier is of. I mean, it isn't. I was going to call it a regular event. It's an elevated event. So yeah, I mean, yes, it is certainly like 6, 7, or 8.
So it's. I don't even really know. Sunday's going to be weird. Like we think Saturday's weird. I think Sunday's going to be bizarre because you're like, okay, well, is there an asterisk? Like I tweeted the Vince Carter gif. It was way over. This is what happened last year with Rahm and Ryan Palmer. Remember, he was way out in front. He's playing with Palmer. It kind of got sort of interesting for a couple holes, but then it wasn't really. And that was what we were set up for on Sunday. And now when Cantlay or Morikawa or Scheffler or whoever wins on Sunday, what do we do with that? I mean, like it just is. I don't know. It's the one event, you know, we've had guys miss entire events. Scheffler missed the US Open. We've had different things like that, but it's the one event where you're like, that feels like an asterisk. He gained 21 strokes on the field.
I'm pretty sure he was first off the tee, first on approach, and second in putting, which is about as dominating as you can get. And it's not only, of course, then brings into question the U.S. Open. The guy's he's the betting favorite. He's the betting favorite going back to Torrey Pines, a place that he has won, trying to capture his first major victory. I think if you follow all the guidelines, if he remains asymptomatic, if he goes into isolation, I think the math comes out to be like Wednesday of U.S. Open week, Kyle. That he could Tuesday, maybe.
I think it's Tuesday. I think that statement said Tuesday. You know, so it's interesting. There's a bunch of people in the comments saying, why can't he play by himself? That was a question that one of our editors had. And I think it's a fair question. I think the problem is you like, as far as I understand, the rules beforehand are not set up that's an outcome. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like, I think that if you're going to ask that question, you should have asked it 13 months ago or 6 weeks ago or whatever. You can't just be like, oh, well, it's Rahm and he's leading. Like you can't just sort of make these things up. I guess unless it's like, well, I shouldn't say that. You can't make these things up on the fly.
They would have changed the rules for some people in some tournaments, I think.
Yes. That's we'll stay in our lane here. But you see what I'm getting at. Like you can't just say like, oh, well, he's the number 2 player in the world or 3 or whatever, and he's leading by 6. So, we should just let him play by himself. Like that's not a rule, or as far as I understand, I don't know. They've changed the COVID protocol a ton of different times. So, as far as I understand it, as of right now, that's not an option. So yes, I don't disagree with that sentiment, but you would have had to set it up like 6 weeks ago.
The next logical question comes with what happens to the guys that he played with. So he played with Xander Morikawa for the final couple of holes this morning, and then he played the entirety of his final rounds with Scotty Scheffler and Patrick Cantlay. Those guys were both asked about the situation afterwards, KP. Patrick Cantlay said, and I quote, "I've already had COVID, so yeah, I've got to imagine I have antibodies, so I don't feel too concerned," end quote. And then Scotty Scheffler said, quote, "I don't feel very concerned. I had COVID. I'm not going to say whether or not I got vaccinated," end quote. And it appears that the tour has at least not reached out to them or made any type of announcement about their playing status, which is seemingly they're going to play golf on Sunday, and maybe they enter contact tracing protocols or whatever that might be.
The Scheffler thing was interesting. I'm not going to say whether or not did he get asked if he was, I guess maybe he got asked if he was vaccinated.
I don't have the transcript here. Yeah. I don't know if he offered that up.
Real quick. I don't want to turn this into like a vaccination podcast, because that's literally the last thing that you and I need in our lives right now.
For sure.
But like, if you're traveling like that and this is part of the deal, I would have to feel really, really strongly about like against vaccinations to not get it, right?
All I'll say? So yes, all I would say is there are probably few people more incentivized to be vaccinated outside of professional golfers. I'm not talking about people who have pre-existing conditions or anything like that, but like people who are making the decision, relatively healthy people. You're playing for a ton of money. You're traveling all over the place. You would think the incentive would be fairly large.
For sure. And like, I get it. I know a bunch of people that aren't getting the vaccine. I understand the politicization of it and all the different things, but it just, I don't know. Like that just, you're like, the way you said it, I think is the right thing. Like the incentive to do it so that this doesn't happen. Like, cause he's not, I think the statement said he's asymptomatic, right? So it's not like a health thing. It's more of like hey, there's a huge tournament and a ton of money on the line. Like that just seems like I don't know. And listen, like if he's that, or if anybody feels that strongly about, and maybe I guess he couldn't have gotten it and then still been tested. Is that right? Like,
so from what I understand, there is obviously a lot. This is all coming out very quickly. There is a press conference that is actually, I don't know if it's over yet, but Andy Levinson, Senior Vice President of Tournament Administration, was giving a press conference. And from what I understand, he said whether you are in the contact tracing protocol or not, fully vaccinated people do not have to test. Now, he would not comment specifically on Jon Rahm, but we know that he did test, and we know that he said fully vaccinated people don't have to. Okay. So I can do 2+2.
So, well, to be fair to Rahm, maybe he's in the between. There's 2 shots. Maybe he's in between. That's where I am right now before I head out to the U.S. Open. So maybe that's the deal. And again, this is not a vax or anti-vax argument. It is like we'll leave it at the way you said it, which is the incentive is very high.
Well, let's do this. I mean, the ramifications of this, it's not only Jon Rahm. So it's Jon Rahm who was going for his sixth career PGA Tour victory. It's $1.6 million. It's the opportunity to potentially play in the U.S. Open. And now it is 2 guys who now get thrust to the top of the leaderboard in Patrick Cantlay and Colin Morikawa, who were 6 shots back and needing a miracle to probably win this golf tournament. Now 3 shots clear of their closest chaser. And I certainly don't want to say, I mean, you used the asterisk word earlier. I'm sure whoever wins this golf tournament, it's going to be like, yeah, that's kind of bittersweet or whatever. I'm not going to return the money. I'm not going to return the trophy. The win is going on my resume, but this was kind of weird.
For sure. And it's interesting. The big winner, ironically, I don't know if it's ironic, is Scotty Scheffler, right? Because 2 hours ago, he had like a 0.1% chance of winning the tournament. And now Data Golf has him at like 8%. And he's the one that is kind of back in the mix. Otherwise, it was going to be 90% Rahm or something crazy happens, and it's either Morikawa or Cantlay. Now those 2 are, I guess they're really the big winners. Scheffler is like a kind of a byproduct winner, right? Because he's kind of brought into it a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, this is one of, and I actually wrote this right before Rahm tested, or before we found out about the positive test, that this is like a really good argument against looking at wins and losses and judging players by that. Because Morikawa was having this just unreal strokes gain, or actually Morikawa and Cantlay's top 10 in every strokes gain category. How rare is that? I mean, that's awesome. That's super impressive. And it was just primary evidence for like, hey, it was bad timing, the wrong week to play great. It was Phil against Stinson in the 16 Open Championship. And now you get the opportunity to do what we always talk about, like, what if you took so-and-so out of the tournament? And
I know.
We do that all the time, right? We talk about that. I do it in my head all the time. We do the statistics on it, and now we get the real life version of that on Sunday. So yes, for sure, asterisk, because everybody knows who's going to win the golf tournament, but also like, it's not like you're still going to be the Memorial champion on Sunday night.
I'm just thinking about this day, right? I mean, I just cannot get over the ace to start the morning, jolt right out of the gate, the absolute scorched earth 64, where he looked like he was in complete control of his game, the high of highs, And then the new, I'm just like, this is, we talk about things that are golf news. We talk about things that are sports news, and we talk about things that are like regular people news. And like, this feels like it's on par with that, with just everything that's going on. It's just crazy.
Yeah. It's sort of the intersection of all of those. Right. And by the way, how much would you have not wanted to be the person that had to deliver the news to Jon Rahm that he had to withdraw from the tournament?
Very much not the person, not that guy. Like, how do you do it? You just have to rip the Band-Aid and just like, hey, John. Well,
and here's the thing. Like, it sucks for him, right? Because this it hasn't really happened. And not even like the circumstance that we're talking about, but just anybody having to withdraw in the middle of an event. It's been really rare, to the tour's credit and to the players' credit, over the last year. And then for it to happen in a week where it's not like he was up 1 or he was down 2, he was going to win the golf tournament. Nobody else, like Cantlay and Morikawa would have said, Rahm's probably going to win. Like, nobody didn't think that. And you're just, I don't know, that's just a bummer. And for it to happen on Saturday night and not like Saturday morning or Friday night, it's just, it's almost like just such a perfect storm of events that you're like, well, this is, I don't know. It feels crazy.
He shot the round of the day on Friday, the round of the day on Saturday. He played 16 twice today in a combined of 3 strokes. He was going to become the only guy to ever defend, or the second guy to defend his crown at Memorial. Of course, Tiger Woods did it. I don't know if I have much more. I mean, there's probably going to be more stuff that comes out. Okay, this was the one other thing that I was thinking about, because and Doug Bell was talking about this on HQ as well, because he's there every single week and he sees kind of the way that the protocols have been going, and the PGA Tour has been relaxing the protocols, and they have I think at the end of June they were going to discontinue basically testing and everything. Do you think that this high profile positive test on a Saturday night from a top 3 player in the world at a premier event will change anything that the PGA Tour has done or was planning to do to this point?
That's a great question. I wouldn't think so. I would think it would be almost, I don't know. Haven't thought about it at all. Just off the top of my head, hot take. I would think it would encourage them toward, I don't know. I don't know if this sounds bad, but encourage them toward not testing.
Oh, just let's stick with the end of June. That'll be our date. And if anything happens after that, like, so be it, or whatever. Like, we're kind of done with this.
Yeah. Because it's a nightmare. Like, it sucks, and he's asymptomatic, and it's I don't know. It just I don't know, because everything just gets so like politicized and made into just stuff that it's not like. They don't like, the tour's been, listen, like, there's plenty of things to criticize PGA Tour about. This is not one of them, right? Like we could talk for 2 hours, whatever. They've been really good on this stuff. And it's a bummer that this is sort of the way that they're going out with this, because other than this, it's been really, really good. And so I don't know. I don't think that they're going to extend that deadline to like the August, just because it almost feels like, yeah, what I said off the top, it would encourage them towards like ending it or wanting it to get here more quickly, so that they're like, hey, we already put this in place. Like, that's what we're sticking with. And then we're moving on to the next season of whatever we have to deal with.
I think I agree with that. I don't think they will do anything, but this was also the scenario that we talked about, where it's like, 15 months ago, we were like, what if Rory gets it? What, you know what I mean? Like, what if a big, like this was one of the scenarios that we talked about. So I agree with you. I think at this point, and you're absolutely right. They were not only the first sport to come back, they did it safely. They've done it safely for over a year. They should be commended for the job they did. It sucks that this is how it'll finish.
It just sucks for everybody, right? Like, there's not a winner here. Even let's say Colin Morikawa shoots the 67 on Sunday and wins. It's such an empty week, right? Like it'll be a more exciting Sunday, but overall, if you look at the whole week, there's some hollowness there.
the first question the eventual winner will be asked is this bittersweet? No matter what the outcome is, the story will be the Jon Rahm WD. That will be the story.
It's like when, like, at some point in every tournament, one guy becomes the story, whether he wins or loses. Not every tournament, but most tournaments. And that's what we saw with Phil at the PGA, right? He gets out in front on, I would say, probably even by Saturday afternoon at the PGA. And you're right, no matter what happens the rest of the way,
right,
Phil's the story.
If he melts down, that's the story.
Exactly. And that's what Rahm became this week. And that stinks. It stinks because now Rahm's not even involved in the end of the week. So the only winner here, I guess, is people who want to tune into an exciting round of golf on Sunday. And even then, it's a bummer because virtuoso performances like that are pretty rare. He was dominating a really hard, good course against one of the best fields of the year. And now that's been stripped away, and we get sort of an emptiness there to end the what had been a really good tournament so far.
All right. KP, anything else? I'm sure as this stuff tends to do, more information will come out immediately after we're done here, or within the next hour, within the next day, and this will be expired. But while we're in the moment, anything else before we get out of here?
Well, the only other thing I was thinking, can you imagine if this was like the US Open and it was, Rahm or Koepka or,
what percentage do you think they would have had a conversation that would have been like, should we just lose this sample? Like, lose this test? Like, let's just go full conspiracy, frozen envelope, like whatever else we need to do here.
For sure. Because the fallout from that is not, for the tour, it's like, okay, you're dealing with this for a couple of days or a week or whatever. The fallout from if you're the USGA, PGA of America, whoever, is like years, several years of it. Because people are talking about how Koepka has, let's say Rahm has an asterisk number of majors, and obviously that's a hypothetical, and I'm glad that it has yet to happen, but that would just be, this is bad enough. This is brutal enough for it to be a major. Do you think that what I'm saying? Well, I don't want to go back to that. That was my only other thought.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I've been in a car for like 6 hours with four kids hollering at me. So I'm out of takes. I'm out of takes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I imagine that this will not be the end of the Jon Rahm news and the end of the discussion. So obviously tune into the first cut, tune into CBS Sports HQ, which I'm trying to see if I'm going on soon. But for now, I think that'll do it. Let me thank producer Jacob. He does all the hard work behind the scenes. That right there, it's Kyle Porter. You can find him on Twitter at Kyle Porter CBS, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been the first cut, and we'll catch you next time.